Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. In this lecture, we are going to discuss a very important topic in hematology unit, that is megaloblastic anemia. So we conducted a poll recently on MediLectures YouTube channel as well as exclusive WhatsApp group, and most of you have voted that you want individual topic detailed videos instead of revision videos for this hematology unit. So approximately 75% voted for the individual detailed videos. Therefore, we are making some of the important videos instead of revision videos in this hematology series. You can download the PDF of this lecture from MediLectures app, which is available on Play Store as well as iOS. You can also check out free tests and various quizzes. You can also enroll in Internal Medicine Revision Series course for schedule-based revision of all the systems of medicine on WhatsApp group with daily discussions, doubts and other study material. Also, there are more than 3000 MCQs with detailed explanations from the textbook. Now let's start with our lecture. So in this lecture, we'll first go through the intro part. Then we'll see the vitamin cobalamin, what are its dietary sources, daily requirements, how it is absorbed in our body, transport of cobalamin. Then we'll discuss the details about folate, what are the dietary levels, how it is absorbed, transport, and what are its biochemical functions. Then we'll see the biochemical basis behind development of megaloblastic anemia. What are its clinical features and effects? What are the hematological findings in the patients who have developed the anemia? Now, based on the causes of this anemia, we'll see what are the causes of cobalamin deficiency and folate deficiency, how to diagnose this condition, and finally the treatment part. The megaloblastic anemias are a group of disorders which are characterized by presence of distinctive morphologic appearances of developing red cells in the bone marrow. So the marrow is usually hypercellular and anemia is based on ineffective erythropoiesis. So what are its causes? These are usually a deficiency of either vitamin B12 or folate, but megaloblastic anemia may also occur because of genetic or acquired abnormalities that affect the metabolism of either of these vitamins, or there can be defect in DNA synthesis which is not related to cobalamin or folate. So these are the causes of megaloblastic anemia. So there can be cobalamin deficiency or abnormality of cobalamin metabolism, folate deficiency or its altered metabolism, therapy with anti-folate drugs like methotrexate, or independent of either cobalamin or folate deficiency which is refractory to treatment with these vitamins. So these include some cases of AML, myelodysplasia, therapy with drugs which interfere with synthesis of DNA like cytosine, arabinoside, hydroxyurea, azidothiamidine, etc., orotic aciduria which responds to uridine, and finally there can be thiamine responsive megaloblastic anemia. Now let's discuss the vitamin cobalamin in detail. So cobalamin or vitamin B12 exists in a number of different chemical forms, and all forms have a cobalt atom at the center of a corin ring. The natural forms mainly includes 2-deoxyadenosine, which is the ADO form, and other one is methylcobalamin. So this ADO form is located in mitochondria and is cofactor for the enzyme L-methylmannoline coenzyme A mutase. So this ADO form is the cofactor for this enzyme, and this cofactor is required for conversion of methylmalonyl coenzyme A to succinyl coenzyme A. The other natural form is methylcobalamin, which is the form in human plasma and cytoplasm, and this is the cofactor for the enzyme methionine synthase, which converts homocysteine to methionine. Now when we consider the dietary sources and requirements of cobalamin, it is synthesized solely by the microorganisms. So the only source for humans is food of animal origin like meat, fish and dairy products. vegetables, fruits and other foods of non-animal origin are free from cobalamin unless they are contaminated by the bacteria. Now, since the body is not able to generate cobalamin, the adult daily losses are equal to the daily requirements of this vitamin, which is almost 1 to 3 microgram per day. Now, this dose is equivalent to 0.1% of the body stores. The total body stores are 2 to 3 milligram, which are sufficient for 3 to 4 years if supplies are completely cut off. Now let's see the absorption of this vitamin. So there are two mechanisms which exist for absorption of cobalamin. First is passive absorption, second is active absorption. Also there is enterohepatic circulation of this vitamin. So let's discuss them one by one. So passive absorption occurs equally through buccal, duodenal as well as ileal mucosa. It is rapid mode of absorption but extremely inefficient. Only less than 1% of the oral dose is absorbed with this process. Now the normal physiologic mechanism is active and it occurs through ileum and is efficient for even small oral doses of cobalamin. Now this active absorption is mediated by intrinsic factor which is released through gastric parietal cells. Now let's see how this active absorption occurs. Firstly, dietary cobalamin is released from protein complexes by enzymes in the stomach, duodenum and jejunum. Then this cobalamin combines rapidly with salivary glycoprotein which is known as R binding protein. So this is a family of cobalamin binding proteins known as heptocorins. Now when this complex passes into the intestine, it is digested by the pancreatic trypsin. So this heptocorin is digested by pancreatic trypsin and the cobalamin is transferred and attached to the intrinsic factor which is released from gastric parietal cells. Now this intrinsic factor cobalamin complex passes to ileum where intrinsic factor attaches to specific tubulin receptor on the microvillus membrane of the enterocytes. This is then followed by endocytosis of tubulin with its ligand, that is intrinsic factor cobalamin complex. Then the cobalamin intrinsic factor complex enters the ileal cell where intrinsic factor is destroyed, and after a delay of about 6 hours, cobalamin appears in portal blood attached to the transcobalamin 2 which is the transport protein of this vitamin. Other than this passive and active absorption, about 0.5 to 5 microgram of cobalamin enters bile each day. This again binds to the intrinsic factor. Therefore, maximum amount of this cobalamin which is excreted through the bile is reabsorbed through the intestine. Now, because of this enterohepatic circulation, cobalamin deficiency develops rapidly in patient with malabsorption as compared to vegans in whom dietary cobalamin is low but the reabsorption of biliary cobalamin is intact. So malabsorption is a more important cause of cobalamin deficiency as compared to decreased dietary intake. After we have discussed the absorption of cobalamin, let's see how it is transported. So two main cobalamin transport proteins exist in human plasma and they both bind cobalamin one molecule for one molecule. Now, transcobalamin 1 is closely related to other cobalamin binding heptocorin present in milk, gastric juice, saliva and other body fluids. Now this transcobalamin 1 is encoded by TCNL gene which is present on chromosome 11q. Now all the heptocorins differ from each other only in the carbohydrate moiety of the molecule. Now this TC1 is derived from specific neutrophil granules. Normally it is about 2/3 saturated with cobalamin which it binds tightly. What is its role? it may play a role in transport of cobalamin analogs to liver for excretion in the bile. And now it is known that cobalamin deficiency due to metformin occurs by this mechanism, that metformin inhibits transcobalamin 1. Now the other major cobalamin transport protein in plasma is transcobalamin 2. The gene for this is present on chromosome 22q. It is synthesized by liver and other tissues like macrophages, ileum and vascular endothelium. It normally carries about 20 to 60 nanogram of cobalamin per liter of plasma and readily gives this vitamin to marrow, placenta and other tissues in which it enters by receptor mediated endocytosis. So this transcobalamin 2 along with cobalamin is internalized by endocytosis by clathrin coated pits. These are internalized into the cell via the clathrin coated pits. This complex is then degraded and the receptor is recycled to the cell membrane. There is recycling of receptor to the cell membrane. So this is how the transport of cobalamin takes place in our body. After we have discussed the details of cobalamin, let's go into details of folate. So it is a water soluble vitamin like vitamin B12. Most food contains some folate and dietary deficiency is less common than cobalamin. Now when we consider the dietary folate, the highest concentrations are found in liver, yeast, spinach, green vegetables and nuts. Now this folate is easily destroyed by heating, particularly in large volumes of water. Now the total body content in adult is around 10 milligram, with the liver containing the largest store. So liver has the maximum amount of folate. What is the daily requirement? It is about 100 microgram and stores are sufficient only for 3 to 4 months. The stores are sufficient only for 3 to 4 months in normal adults. So severe folate deficiency may develop rapidly as compared to vitamin B12, for which it takes around 3 to 4 years to develop. Now when we consider the absorption of folate, it is absorbed rapidly from the upper small intestine. The absorption of folate polyglutamate is less efficient than folate monoglutamate. On an average, about 50% of food folate is absorbed. Now polyglutamate forms are hydrolyzed to monoglutamate form. All the dietary folates are converted to 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate in small intestinal mucosa before entering the portal circulation. Monoglutamate forms are actively transported by proton-coupled folate transporter. Now this proton-coupled folate transporter is encoded by the gene SCL46A1 and it is situated at apical brush border and is most active at pH 5.5. Now this pH is about the pH of duodenum and jejunum. Therefore, maximum absorption takes place through this site. Now genetic mutation of this protein underlies hereditary malabsorption of folate. Now if the intestine is having more than 400 microgram exposure of folate, it is absorbed largely unchanged and then it is converted to natural folates in the liver. On the other hand, lower doses are first converted to 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate in small intestinal mucosa before absorption, as we have already discussed. Now 60 to 90 microgram is excreted into the small intestine through the bile. So this was about the absorption of folate. Now let's see how it is transported. Now about 1/3 of folate is loosely bound to albumin and 2/3 of it is in the unbound or free form. The most common and abundant form of folate in all body fluids is 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate in the monoglutamate form. Now, 3 types of folate binding proteins are involved in its transportation. Firstly, the transport of plasma folate, that is 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate to cells, occurs by reduced folate transporter, which is RFC, also termed as SLC 19A1. Now, this reduced folate transporter also mediates uptake of methotrexate by the cells. The receptor mediated endocytosis of folate occurs with the help of folate receptor 2 and folate receptor 3, which are embedded in the cell membrane. Finally, the transport of folate from vesicles to cell cytoplasm occurs with the help of proton coupled folate transporter, which transports folate at low pH. So this is how folate is transported in our body. Now let's see various biochemical reactions which are associated with folate. So folate basically acts as coenzyme in the transfer of single carbon units. Now 2 of these reactions are involved in purine synthesis and 1 in pyrimidine synthesis necessary for DNA and RNA replication. So purine synthesis, the 2 reactions require first 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate and other reaction requires 10-formyl tetrahydrofolate. So the formation of purines needed for DNA and RNA synthesis occurs through these reactions, but these reactions are not rate limiting. Now the important point is that in pyrimidine synthesis, the methylation of deoxyuridine monophosphate to thymidine monophosphate occurs with the help of folate, and this can then form TTP, which is the required pyrimidine in both RNA as well as DNA replication. Now this reaction requires 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. It is the rate limiting step in DNA synthesis. After this reaction, there is oxidation of tetrahydrofolate to dihydrofolate, which is again reduced to tetrahydrofolate with the help of enzyme dihydrofolate reductase. Now folate is also a coenzyme for methionine synthesis from homocysteine, in which methylcobalamin is also involved, and tetrahydrofolate is regenerated in this reaction. There is demethylation of 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate to tetrahydrofolate. Now this tetrahydrofolate is acceptor of single carbon unit which are newly entering the active pool via conversion of serine to glycine. So this tetrahydrofolate is utilized as cofactor in serine to glycine interconversion, which again form 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this is for entry of single carbon units into the active pool. Also the formation of methionine is very important because it is the precursor of S-adenosyl methionine, SAM, which is the universal methyl donor. This S-adenosyl methionine is considered as universal methyl donor involved in more than 100 methyl transferase reactions. Now as we discussed that during the formation of DTMP, there is conversion of tetrahydrofolate to dihydrofolate, which is again reduced to tetrahydrofolate via the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase. Now the drugs like methotrexate and pyrimethamine, what these do, these inhibit the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase, therefore prevents the formation of active tetrahydrofolate coenzyme from dihydrofolate, so that further formation of these pyrimidine cannot occur. So this is the mechanism of action of these drugs like methotrexate and pyrimethamine. So these are the biochemical reactions associated with folate as a cofactor. Now let's discuss the biochemical basis of megaloblastic anemia. So the common feature of all megaloblastic anemias is a defect in DNA synthesis that affects rapidly dividing cells in the bone marrow. Now this occurs due to disparity in rate of synthesis or availability of 4 intermediate precursors of DNA. In deficiencies of either folate or cobalamin, there is failure to convert DUMP to DTMP, which is the precursor for DTTP, which is required for DNA synthesis. This occurs due to decreased 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate availability, which is reduced in both cobalamin and folate deficiency. Now on chromosomal level, there is failure of joining of incomplete replicons with resultant single-stranded DNA breaks. Now when we discuss the cobalamin folate reactions, as we discussed, folate is required for many reactions in mammals as we have discussed in the previous slide, whereas only 2 reactions require cobalamin. The first one is conversion of methyl malonyl coenzyme A to succinyl coenzyme A, which requires adocobalamin as a cofactor. Second reaction is homocysteine to methionine conversion, which requires methylcobalamin as well as 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this reaction requires both cobalamin as well as folate. Now folate coenzymes are all polyglutamated because large size aids retention inside the cell. Now the enzyme folate polyglutamate synthase can only use tetrahydrofolate. What happens is in methylcobalamin deficiency, the methyl tetrahydrofolate accumulates in the plasma as there is no conversion of homocysteine to methionine. Therefore, the THF is not formed. Tetrahydrofolate is not formed. This is the reason why methyl tetrahydrofolate accumulates in plasma. Now, this condition is termed as THF starvation or methylfolate trap. Now, this theory explains the abnormalities of folate metabolism that occurs in the abnormality of cobalamin metabolism. So, there is increased serum folate with decreased cell folate concentration. This is termed as THF starvation or methylfolate trap. Also, this explains how anemia of cobalamin deficiency responds to large doses of folic acid. Now let's discuss the clinical features. First of all, many symptomless patients are detected through the finding of raised mean corpuscular volume on a routine blood test. The main symptoms are that of anemia. The specific features of megaloblastic anemia includes glossitis, angular cheilosis, mild fever, unconjugated jaundice, reversible melanin hyperpigmentation, which can occur with both folate as well as cobalamin deficiency. So all these specific features can occur with both folate and cobalamin deficiency. Bruising can result due to thrombocytopenia, that is decreased platelet count. There is increased risk of infections, particularly respiratory and urinary tract infection due to leukopenia and anemia. Neurological manifestations are important as vitamin B12 or cobalamin is needed for myelination of central nervous system. Its deficiency may cause bilateral peripheral neuropathy, or there can be demyelination of posterior and lateral tracts of cervical as well as thoracic spinal cord. Both cervical as well as thoracic spinal cord. There can be optic atrophy, anosmia, loss of taste. Cerebral symptoms includes dementia, depression, psychotic symptoms as well as cognitive impairment. On MRI, there can be spongy degeneration of the spinal cord. Now, there can be loss of proprioception and vibration sensation with positive Romberg's and Lermit sign. Gait may be ataxic with spasticity, and on examination, the patients usually have hyperreflexia. Autonomic dysfunction can result in postural hypotension, incontinence, as well as impotence in males. Long-term nutritional cobalamin deficiency in infancy leads to poor brain and intellectual development. Now, the biochemical basis for cobalamin neuropathy remains obscure. It is thought to be related to defect in homocysteine to methionine conversion. There is defect in homocysteine to methionine conversion with resultant accumulation of S-adenosyl homocysteine in the brain, which results in inhibition of various transmethylation reactions. Now, after the bone marrow, the next frequently affected tissues are epithelial surfaces. So, epithelial surfaces of mouth can be affected, leading to glossitis. Similarly, the epithelium of stomach, small intestine, respiratory, urinary, and female genital tracts can show macrocytosis, increased multinucleate, and dying cells. Now, when we consider the complications in pregnancy, the gonads are also affected and infertility is common in both females as well as males. So, this infertility can occur with deficiency of either of the vitamin, but the deficiency should be severe. Maternal folate deficiency has been implicated as a cause of prematurity, recurrent fetal losses, as well as neural tube defects. Now, when we consider neural tube defects, folic acid supplementation at the time of conception and during the first 12 weeks of pregnancy decrease the incidence of neural tube defects by 70%. So, these defects include anencephaly, meningomyelocele, encephalocele, and spina bifida. Most of the protective effect can be achieved by taking folic acid 0.4 mg or 400 microgram daily at the time of conception. Also, there is decreased incidence of cleft palate and hair lip with prophylactic folic acid supplementation. Now, children with severe homocystinuria, that is more than 100 micromoles per liter levels due to deficiency of either of the three of the enzymes, which include methionine synthase, methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, or cystathione synthase, have increased risk of vascular diseases like ischemic heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, pulmonary embolism, as well as venous thrombosis in teenagers or in young adulthood. So, this homocystinuria is a common cause of young stroke in patients less than 40 years of age, as well as ischemic heart disease in such young patients. Now, when we consider malignancy, prophylactic folic acid in pregnancy has been found in some studies to decrease the risk of acute lymphoblastic leukemia in childhood. Other tumors that have been associated with folate polymorphism include follicular lymphoma, breast cancer, and gastric cancer. Now, it is important to note that folic acid, on the other hand, may feed the tumors. Therefore, it should be avoided in patients with already established tumors. If there is a known tumor, we should avoid folic acid in such patients unless there is severe megaloblastic anemia due to folate deficiency. Now, let's see what are the hematological findings in megaloblastic anemia. Firstly, this is the patient with knuckle hyperpigmentation who presented with anemia, features of anemia, and was found to be deficient in vitamin B12 levels. So, this is the reversible hyperpigmentation which can be seen with both cobalamin as well as folate deficiency. So, coming on to the hematologic findings, on peripheral blood smear, oval macrocytes usually with considerable anisocytosis and poikilocytosis are the main features of megaloblastic anemia. Mean corpuscular volume is usually more than 100 femtoliter unless a cause of microcytosis like iron deficiency is present. There are some hypersegmented neutrophils with more than 5 nuclear lobes. So these are characteristic of megaloblastic anemia. There may be leukopenia and thrombocytopenia. So leukopenia occurs due to decrease in granulocytes as well as lymphocytes. There is decreased counts in both of these cells, but the counts are usually more than 1500 per cubic millimeter. On the other hand, thrombocytopenia, if present, the count is usually more than 40,000 platelets per cubic millimeter. When we see the bone marrow findings, in severely anemic patients, the marrow is hypercellular with an accumulation of primitive cells due to selective death by apoptosis of more mature forms. There is increased number of cells with an eccentric lobulated nuclei or nuclear fragments. There can be giant or abnormal metamyelocytes and enlarged hyperpolypoid megakaryocytes. According to the severity, the bone marrow findings are categorized into early, mild, and intermediate forms. Now, study of chromosomes of bone marrow cells, transformed lymphocytes, and other proliferating cells in the body show a variety of changes including random breaks, reduced contraction, spreading of centromere, and exaggeration of secondary chromosomal constrictions. This can also be associated with over-prominent satellites. Now, similar abnormalities can be produced by anti-metabolite drugs. So these drugs include cytosine arabinoside, drugs like hydroxyurea and methotrexate that interfere with either DNA replication or folate metabolism. Now, other than this, there are features of ineffective hematopoiesis, like there is increase in unconjugated bilirubin. This occurs due to death of nucleated cells in the marrow. Other evidence for this includes increased in urine urobilinogen, decreased haptoglobin, positive urine hemosiderin, and increased LDH levels. Also, a weakly positive direct antiglobulin test due to complement may lead to false diagnosis of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So there can be falsely positive direct antiglobulin test in megaloblastic anemia, and this is due to the complement levels. So this can lead to false diagnosis of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So this is the peripheral smear of megaloblastic anemia showing large oval macroovelocytes with anisocytosis and poikilocytosis and hypersegmented neutrophil. And this is the bone marrow finding in megaloblastic anemia showing accumulation of primitive cells due to selective death of more mature forms. Now these are the causes of cobalamin deficiency which are sufficiently severe to cause megaloblastic anemia. So it is more commonly due to malabsorption as compared to nutritional deficiency or inadequate dietary intake, which can be seen in vegans. So this is less common because these have intact enterohepatic circulation. So nutritional deficiency can occur in vegans. Malabsorption can occur due to pernicious anemia. Gastric causes include congenital absence of intrinsic factor or a functional abnormality. There can be total or partial gastrectomy, which leads to decreased release of intrinsic factor. Intestinal causes include intestine stagnant loop syndrome, ileal resection, Crohn's disease, tropical screw, fish tapeworm infestation, etc. So we'll discuss these causes in detail. So firstly, deficiency in adults due to inadequate dietary intake may arise in vegans who completely omit meat, fish, eggs, cheese and other animal products from their diet. But this deficiency usually do not progress to megaloblastic anemia since the diet of most vegans is not totally lacking in cobalamin, and also there is intact enterohepatic circulation of cobalamin in these patients. Now, infants who are born to severely cobalamin deficient mothers develops anemia at 3 to 6 months of age. Also, these have growth retardation and impaired psychomotor function. Now, MRI in these infants will show delayed myelination. There is delayed myelination. Along with this, there is diffuse atrophy in the brain parenchyma. Now coming on to the gastric causes of cobalamin deficiency. Earlier, Schilling test helped us identify the cause of cobalamin deficiency, whether it is due to decreased intake or malabsorption. But radioactive B12, which was used in this test, is no longer available. Therefore, Schilling test is no longer performed. So, pernicious anemia occurs due to gastric atrophy causing severe lack of intrinsic factor. It is more common in African population, more common in females with a male to female ratio of 1:1.6, and the median age of onset is 70 to 80 years. It is associated with other autoimmune diseases like thyroid disease, vitiligo, hypoparathyroidism, type 1 diabetes, as well as Addison's disease. Along with this, it is also associated with hypogammaglobulinemia, premature graying or bluing of eyes, and blood group A. There is decreased gastric output of hydrochloric acid, pepsin, as well as intrinsic factor. Along with this, there is increased serum levels of gastrin and decreased serum level of pepsinogen 1. Now, gastric biopsy in these patients shows atrophy of all the layers of body and fundus. There is loss of glandular elements. Parietal and chief cells are replaced by mucous cells, and there is a mixed inflammatory infiltrate predominantly consisting of CD4 cells. Now, these cells are directed against gastric hydrogen potassium ATPase pump, which is the proton pump responsible for the maintaining the acidity of gastric mucosa. And it is important to note that antral mucosa in pernicious anemia is preserved. There is no damage to the antral mucosa. Now, what is the role of Helicobacter pylori in pernicious anemia? So, it occurs at an early phase of atrophic gastritis, and it presents in young patients as iron deficiency anemia, while in older patients as pernicious anemia. So, this H. pylori infection also plays a role in pathogenesis of pernicious anemia. Now, when we test for antibodies in pernicious anemia, two types of IgG antibody, immunoglobulin G antibody, may be found in sera of patients with pernicious anemia. So, type 1 or blocking antibodies prevents the combination of intrinsic factor with cobalamin. These are present in 55% of the patients, while type 2 or binding antibodies prevents the attachment of intrinsic factor to the ileal mucosa. These are present in 35% of the patient. Now, are there some antibodies present in gastric juice as well? Yes. Intrinsic factor antibodies, both type 1 and type 2, have also been detected in 80% of the patients of pernicious anemia in the gastric juice. Now, parietal cell antibody can also be found, and this is found in 90% of the patients of pernicious anemia. But these antibodies are non-specific, as these are also found in 16% of the normal females who are aged more than 60 years. So these are also directed against alpha and beta subunit of hydrogen potassium ATPase or proton pump. Along with this antibodies, pernicious anemia also shows cell mediated immunity to the intrinsic factor. Now, other than pernicious anemia, there can be congenital intrinsic factor deficiency or there can be functional abnormality of intrinsic factor. So it is a autosomal recessive condition and the affected child usually presents with megaloblastic anemia in 1 to 3 years of life with no demonstrable intrinsic factor. Now the biopsy shows normal gastric mucosa with normal acid secretion and both parietal cell as well as intrinsic factor antibodies are absent. These are not found in this condition. Now next gastric cause is gastrectomy. So after total gastrectomy, cobalamin deficiency is inevitable and prophylactic cobalamin therapy should be commenced immediately after the operation. On the other hand, after partial gastrectomy, only 10 to 15% of the patients develop deficiency. And what is the cause of deficiency of cobalamin in gastrectomy? It is due to inability to release intrinsic factor. Now, food cobalamin malabsorption occurs due to failure of release of cobalamin from the binding proteins in the food. It is more commonly seen in elderly population. Cobalamin absorption is normal when it is tested with crystalline form of cobalamin. On the other hand, if tested with food-bound cobalamin, this absorption will be abnormal. It is usually due to mild forms of atrophic gastritis, proton pump inhibitor therapy, and patients after bariatric surgery. Now, after we have discussed inadequate dietary intake and gastric causes of cobalamin deficiency, now let's discuss the intestinal causes. So these include intestinal stagnant loop syndrome, in which there is colonization of upper small intestine with fecal organisms. This may occur with jejunal diverticulosis, enteroanastomosis, anatomic blind loop due to Crohn's disease, tuberculosis, or an operative procedure. Secondly, ileal resection more than equal to 1.2 meters of terminal ileum can cause cobalamin malabsorption. Now there is a syndrome known as Imerslund-Grasbeck syndrome. This is also known as congenital cobalamin malabsorption. It is also known as autosomal recessive megaloblastic anemia. Now it is the most common cause of cobalamin deficiency in infants in the Western population. The patients secrete normal amounts of intrinsic factor as well as gastric acid. So these are basically due to mutations in either tubulin gene or AMN gene, which are responsible for absorption of this cobalamin from the ileum. Now 90% of these patients also show non-specific proteinuria with normal renal function and normal renal biopsy. Now other intestinal causes of cobalamin deficiency include tropical sprue. So nearly all patients with acute and subacute tropical sprue show malabsorption of cobalamin, which may persist as principal abnormality in the chronic form of the disease. Now absorption of cobalamin improves with antibiotic therapy in these patients. Fish tapeworm infestation, which is D. latum, can also lead to this deficiency. So this worm lives in the small intestine of humans and accumulates cobalamin from the food. So cobalamin is unavailable for absorption and individuals acquire this worm by eating raw or partially cooked fish, and heavy infestation can lead to anemia as well as neuropathy. Now about 30% of untreated patients of gluten-induced enteropathy may have deficiency is not so severe in these patients and it can be corrected by gluten-free diet. as it can reverse the pathology in the intestine and can restart the absorption of cobalamin. Now, severe chronic pancreatitis due to lack of trypsin can also lead to cobalamin deficiency. So this cobalamin R binder complex is degraded with the help of trypsin, which is secreted from the pancreas, so that cobalamin is able to bind to the intrinsic factor and is absorbed from the ileum. Now in chronic pancreatitis, due to this unavailability of trypsin, there will be no degradation of this cobalamin R binder and it cannot attach to the intrinsic factor, therefore there will be no absorption. HIV infection can also lead to the deficiency of cobalamin. Now, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, which is characterized by increased acidity due to a gastrin-secreting tumor, this again inactivates trypsin so that cobalamin cannot be absorbed due to its inability to bind to the intrinsic factor. Now, both total body irradiation as well as local radiotherapy to the ileum may cause malabsorption of cobalamin. Now, graft versus host disease commonly affects the small intestine. Malabsorption of cobalamin due to abnormal gut flora as well as damage to ileal mucosa is common in this condition. Now, what are the drugs which can cause cobalamin deficiency? These include metformin. As we have already discussed, this causes deficiency by decreasing the levels of transcobalamin 1 rather than causing the malabsorption. Other drugs which can lead to deficiency include colchicine, neomycin, anticonvulsants. Also, alcohol intake is associated with malabsorption as well as decreased dietary intake in patients, as these patients have poor dietary intakes. Now, other than these causes of cobalamin deficiency, megaloblastic anemia can also occur due to abnormalities in cobalamin metabolism. So, these abnormal metabolism can occur due to either congenital transcobalamin 2 deficiency or its abnormality. There can be congenital methylmalonic acidemia or aciduria. This condition may be due to a functional defect in either mitochondrial methylmalonyl coenzyme A mutase or its cofactor, that is adocobalamin. This is poorly responsive to therapy with cobalamin. There can also be acquired abnormality of cobalamin metabolism due to nitrous oxide inhalation. So what nitrous oxide do is it irreversibly oxidizes the methylcobalamin to its inactive precursor. Now this leads to inactivation of methionine synthase. Methylmalonic aciduria do not occur in this condition as adocobalamin is not inactivated by this nitrous oxide. So nitrous oxide inhalation, which is commonly used in ICU, can also lead to megaloblastic anemia. Now after we have discussed the causes of cobalamin deficiency in detail, now let's see in what all conditions folate deficiency can occur. So firstly, dietary folate deficiency is common. Certain individuals are particularly prone to have diets containing inadequate amounts of folate. In United States and some other countries, fortification of diet with folate, that is adding folate in wheat, grains, etc., has been adopted. But still this deficiency can occur in old age, infancy, especially who solely feed on goat's milk. The infants who solely feed on goat's milk, as this goat milk is having low folate content. Also in poverty, alcoholism, chronic invalids, psychiatrically disturbed patients, and it may also be associated with scurvy or kwashiorkor. Now when we consider malabsorption, the major causes of deficiency include tropical sprue, gluten-induced enteropathy in children and adults. There can be specific malabsorption of folate. Intestinal megaloblastosis can be caused by severe cobalamin or folate deficiency. Minor causes of deficiency include extensive jejunal resection, Crohn's disease, partial gastrectomy, congestive heart failure, Whipple's disease, etc. Now, other than this, there can be excessive utilization or loss of folate. This can be either physiological, pathological due to use of anti-folate drugs, or can be due to some other causes. Now, physiological increase can occur with pregnancy, lactation, and prematurity. So, in pregnancy, folate requirements are increased to about 400 microgram per day in normal pregnancy. What are the reasons? This occurs partly because of transfer of this vitamin to the developing fetus, but the main reason is increased folate catabolism due to cleavage of folate coenzymes in rapidly proliferating tissues. Now, megaloblastic anemia due to this deficiency is prevented by the prophylactic folic acid therapy during the pregnancy. Now, other physiological condition which needs excess utilization of folate is prematurity. So, a newborn infant has up to 10 times more requirement than adults on per kg weight basis. Neonatal folate levels falls rapidly to the lowest values at about 6 weeks of age, and these falls are maximum in the premature babies, small babies who have less than 1500 gram of birth weight, and those who are having feeding difficulties, infections, or have undergone multiple exchange transfusions. So in these babies, prophylactic folic acid should be given. Now, when we consider the pathological conditions leading to folate deficiency, these include hematological diseases like chronic hemolytic anemias, sickle cell anemia, thalassemia major, myelofibrosis. So in these and other conditions of increased cell turnover like malignancies like carcinoma, lymphoma, leukemia, and myeloma, folate deficiency arises because it is not completely reutilized after performing the coenzyme functions. This deficiency can also occur with inflammatory diseases like tuberculosis, Crohn's disease, psoriasis, exfoliative dermatitis, as well as malaria. So in these conditions, the deficiency is first of all caused by there is decreased diet and appetite in these patients. Also, there is increased folate demand in these patients. Systemic infections may also cause malabsorption of folate. So these are the reasons for folate deficiency in inflammatory conditions. Now, metabolic disease like homocystinuria can also lead to the folate deficiency. So this is a rare metabolic defect in which there is defective or inability to convert homocysteine to cystathione. This conversion is not happening. So due to this, there is increased conversion of homocysteine to methionine, and this conversion leads to overutilization of folate, leading to its deficiency. Now, excessive urinary loss of folate can occur with congestive heart failure and acute liver disease. So, folate losses of more than 100 microgram per day may occur in some of these patients due to release of folate from the damaged liver cells. Now, hemodialysis as well as peritoneal dialysis can also lead to folate loss. As folate is loosely bound to plasma proteins, it is easily removed from plasma by the dialysis. Therefore, routine folate prophylaxis is now given to these patients. Now, what are the anti-folate drugs which can lead to its deficiency? These include anticonvulsants like phenytoin, primidone, barbiturates, sulfasalazine, other drugs like nitrofurantoin, tetracycline, and anti-tubercular drugs. Mixed causes include liver diseases, alcoholism, and patients in intensive care units. So these are all the causes which can lead to folate deficiency. After we have discussed in detail the causes, let's come on to the diagnosis. So firstly, the diagnosis of cobalamin or folate deficiency has traditionally depended on the recognition of relevant abnormalities in peripheral blood and analysis of blood levels of these vitamins. First, we will see diagnosis of cobalamin deficiency followed by folate deficiency. So there are three measures which we can use. Firstly, we can measure serum cobalamin, serum methylmalonate and homocysteine, and some test for identifying the cause of cobalamin deficiency. So serum levels can be measured by ELISA or CBLA assays. CBLA is competitive binding luminescence assay. The normal serum levels ranges from 160 to 1000 nanogram per liter. In patients with megaloblastic anemia due to cobalamin deficiency, usual levels are less than 100 nanogram per liter. Now the patients who have spinal cord involvement have even lower levels even in the absence of anemia. Now when we perform CBLA in pernicious anemia, it can show falsely normal B12 levels in 50% of the cases. Therefore, wherever clinical indications of pernicious anemia are strong, a normal serum vitamin B12 does not rule out this diagnosis. So these are the conditions where decreased levels are found. Now increased levels of B12 can be seen with increased levels of transcobalamin 1, liver, renal and myeloproliferative diseases, and certain cancers like CA breast, colon, liver, etc. Now after serum cobalamin, we can measure serum methylmalonate and homocysteine. So there is increased serum methylmalonate levels in cobalamin deficiency. Mildly elevated serum methylmalonate and homocysteine levels occur in up to 30% of the normal individuals as well. Now there is increased homocysteine in both cobalamin and folate deficiency, but this may also increase in certain other conditions. These conditions include chronic renal disease, alcoholism, smoking, pyridoxine deficiency, hypothyroidism, and treatment with steroids and drugs like cyclophosphamide, etc. Thus, homocysteine levels must be carefully interpreted for diagnosis of cobalamin or folate deficiency. So, methylmalonate is elevated only in cobalamin deficiency, while homocysteine levels are elevated in both cobalamin as well as folate deficiency. In addition, this is also elevated in these conditions. Now, what are the tests to identify what is the cause of cobalamin deficiency? So we have already discussed that Schilling test is not done now. So we cannot identify that whether this is due to inadequate dietary intake or malabsorption. The tests to diagnose pernicious anemia includes increased serum gastrin levels, decreased serum pepsinogen, and intrinsic factor as well as parietal cell antibodies. Now there can be coexisting iron deficiency which may blunt the development of macrocytosis in vitamin B12 deficiency. So in more than 60 years of adults, vitamin B12 deficiency is also accompanied by iron deficiency in about 15 to 20% of the cases. Therefore, patients with iron deficiency must have vitamin B12 levels assessed and vice versa. Now let's see how can we diagnose folate deficiency. Firstly, we can do serum folate, then red cell folate can be done, and there are certain tests for identifying the cause of folate deficiency. So serum folate can be identified by using ELISA. Normal levels are 2 to 15 microgram per liter. Decreased serum folate is seen in all the folate deficient patients, and there is no falsely normal levels as compared to cobalamin deficiency. Now, increased folate levels can occur with severe cobalamin deficiency as there is blocked conversion of methyl tetrahydrofolate to tetrahydrofolate inside the cells. This was termed as THF starvation or methyl folate trap, as we have already discussed. Methyl folate trap. Now, increased levels of serum folate can also occur with intestinal stagnant loop syndrome due to absorption of bacterially synthesized folate. Now, red cell folate assay is valuable test of body folate stores as it is less affected than serum assay by recent diet or hemolysis. The normal levels of red cell folate is 160 to 640 microgram per liter of PEG cells, and decreased levels are seen in folate deficiency and severe cobalamin deficiency. Falsely normal levels can be seen with recent blood transfusion. Now, for test for identifying the cause of folate deficiency, dietary history of the patient is very important, and we can also test for TTG antibodies, and if these are positive, it can be followed by duodenal biopsy to rule out celiac disease. So this was all about the diagnosis in megaloblastic anemia. Now let's come on to the final part, that is the treatment. So it is usually possible to establish which of the following deficiencies, that is folate deficiency or cobalamin deficiency, is the cause of anemia. Therefore, we have to treat only with the appropriate vitamin. Now in patients who are admitted to hospital severely ill, it may be necessary to treat with both vitamins in large doses after the collection of appropriate blood samples for cobalamin and folate acids, as well as bone marrow biopsy sample. Now blood transfusion is usually unnecessary and is inadvisable, but if essential, 1 to 2 units of PEG cell should be given slowly with usual treatment of heart failure if present. Now let's see the treatment of cobalamin deficiency. It is usually necessary to treat patients who have developed cobalamin deficiency with lifelong regular cobalamin injections. Now in few instances, treatment of underlying condition can be done. For example, fish tapeworm infestation, tropical sprue with the help of antibiotics, and intestinal stagnant loop that is amenable to surgery. Now what are the indications for starting cobalamin therapy? Firstly, a well documented megaloblastic anemia or any other hematological abnormality, and secondly, neuropathy 2 deficiency. So these are the two indications for starting the therapy with cobalamin. Now let's see what is the dosing for treatment. So for replenishment of body stores, 6 1000 microgram intramuscular injection of hydroxycobalamin is given at 3 to 7 days interval. Now more frequent doses are used in patients with cobalamin neuropathy, but there is no evidence that they produce a better response. Allergic reactions are rare, and these may require desensitization or antihistamine or glucocorticoid coverage. Now for maintenance therapy, similar dose, that is 1000 microgram of hydroxycobalamin intramuscular. Now this has to be given every 3 monthly. Now this was dose for hydroxycobalamin. If we are using cyanocobalamin, since it has poor retention, protocols generally use higher and more frequent doses. For example, for cyanocobalamin, 1000 microgram of dosing per month is given for maintenance, in contrast to 3 monthly dosing of hydroxycobalamin. Now can we use oral dose for therapy? Since a small fraction of cobalamin can be absorbed passively through mucous membrane, even if there is complete failure of active absorption through physiological intrinsic factor dependent mechanism, large daily doses of 1000 to 2000 microgram of cyanocobalamin are used in pernicious anemia for replacement and maintenance of normal cobalamin stores. Now whenever oral therapy is given, it is very important to monitor compliance of oral treatment, particularly in elderly forgetful patients. Now there are certain conditions which are treated with B12 injections despite the normal levels of this vitamin. These include multiple sclerosis and chronic fatigue syndrome, also known as myalgic encephalomyelitis. Now the benefit in these conditions seems that it is due to placebo effect of painless pink injection to the patients. Now let's discuss the treatment of folate deficiency. So oral dose of 5 to 15 milligram of folic acid daily are satisfactory, as sufficient folate is absorbed from these extremely large doses even in patients with severe malabsorption. Now, what should be the duration of therapy? So it should be continued depending on the underlying disease, but it is customary to continue the treatment for at least 4 months when all the folate depleted or deficient cells are completely eliminated and these cells are replaced with new folate replete populations. Now, before starting the therapy with large doses of folic acid, cobalamin deficiency must be excluded, because if this deficiency is present and we have treated the patient with folic acid large doses, so it will correct the anemia. But patient will still have the neuropathy which is related to cobalamin deficiency. Now, long-term therapy is required when the underlying cause of deficiency cannot be corrected and the deficiency is likely to recur. So, long-term therapy is required in patients who are on chronic dialysis, hemolytic anemia, and gluten-induced enteropathy. Now, wherever mild but chronic folate deficiency occurs, it is preferable to encourage dietary improvement after correcting the deficiency with a short course of folic acid. Now, what is folinic acid? It is 5-formyl tetrahydrofolate. It is a stable form of fully reduced folate and it can be given orally or parenterally to overcome the toxic effects of dihydrofolate reductase inhibitors like methotrexate, trimethoprim, and cotrimoxazole. Now, prophylactic folic acid is used in chronic dialysis patients and patients who are on parenteral feeds. Prophylactic folic acid has been used to decrease homocysteine levels to prevent cardiovascular diseases and also improving the cognitive function in elderly, but no firm data is available to show any benefit in these patients. Now, what is the dose in pregnancy? First of all, in many countries, food is fortified with folic acid. So, folic acid is added to the grain or flour to reduce the risk of neural tube defects during pregnancy. Nevertheless, folic acid 0.4 milligram per day should be given as supplement before as well as throughout the pregnancy, even if food is fortified. This dose, which is low dose of folic acid, will not correct the anemia due to B12 deficiency and it will only prevent neural tube defects. Now, what is the benefit of food fortification? Now, some studies in early pregnancy show significant lack of compliance with folic acid supplementation. So, food fortification is helpful in such cases. Now, if the women already had previous history of neural tube defects, the large dose of folic acid, that is 5 milligram per daily, has to be given during pregnancy contemplation and which has to be continued throughout the pregnancy. Now, in infants and children, small premature babies during the first 6 weeks have to be given folic acid 1 milligram per day. Babies who have birth weight less than 1500 gram and large premature babies who require exchange transfusions, develop feeding difficulties, infections, have vomiting or diarrhea, these also require folic acid supplementation. So this was all about the treatment of these conditions. Now coming on to the last slide of this presentation, that is the other causes of megaloblastic anemia which are not due to cobalamin or folate deficiency or their altered metabolism. So firstly, anti-metabolite drugs like hydroxyurea, cytosine, arabinocyte, as we have discussed, what these do? These inhibit DNA replication, therefore can lead to megaloblastic anemia. So this is irrespective of folate and cyanocobalamin deficiency. Now, nucleoside analogs, that is antiretroviral therapy, which is used against HIV infection, may also cause macrocytosis and megaloblastic marrow changes. Therefore, we discussed in the causes that both HIV infection as well as its therapy, antiretroviral therapy, can lead to megaloblastic changes. A rare disease known as orotic aciduria, the two consecutive enzymes in purine synthesis is defective. So in this condition, purine synthesis is defective, which again leads to inhibition of DNA synthesis, and this condition responds to treatment with uridine, which bypasses this block. So treatment with uridine will bypass this block in orotic aciduria. Now, thiamine responsive megaloblastic anemia is due to genetic defect in high affinity thiamine transport gene, which is SCL19A2. There is defective RNA ribose synthesis through impaired trans-ketolase activity, which is a thiamine dependent enzyme in the pentose cycle. This leads to decreased nucleic acid production, and it may also be associated with diabetes mellitus, deafness, and presence of many ringed sideroblasts in the bone marrow. So this is the thiamine responsive megaloblastic anemia. Now, AML as well as myelodysplasia can also lead to megaloblastic changes whose explanation is unclear. So with this, we have completed this lecture in detail. I hope I have covered every minute detail of this topic. Thank you so much, guys. Kindly hit the like and subscribe button.